Hey guys, tonight we explore a surprisingly uneventful episode of Divine Mischief, one that involves sandals, frost, and very little urgency. It's the kind of myth that never made it into epic poetry, because, well, nothing that important happens. But that's exactly what makes it perfect for drifting off dot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up early, not because you have to, or because there's something pressing on your celestial calendar, but because today, you're in the mood to mess with your brother. The sun isn't up yet, which is perfect. Apollo's still asleep, and so is the rest of Olympus. Even the muses are silent, which never happens. Maybe they're hungover. Who knows? You stretch your arms dramatically, the way you always do when you want someone to notice you, even though there's no one around. Then you crack your knuckles, tilt your head, and grin. Not a wicked grin, just that specific brand of "this might be funny in a really dumb way" grin. The kind of smile that comes right before stealing something utterly unnecessary. Today's mission? Take Apollo's sandals. Not the fancy golden ones. No, those are ceremonial and way too obvious. You're after the everyday pair. The ones he wears to the Agra when he wants to look casual and intimidating at the same time. You know the ones. Scuffed leather, celestial stitching, slightly too tight, but he won't admit it. You know exactly where he keeps them. In the sunroom. Of course he has a sunroom. You're not even sure if it's a metaphor or an actual room powered by the sun, but the sandals are always there, glowing faintly like leftover daylight. You tiptoe down the hallway, not because you need to. Your feet don't actually make sound unless you want them to, but because it adds drama. You pass Dionisio snoring upside down in a fruit bowl. Typical Tuesday. At the sunroom entrance, you pause. The floor here is warm, not metaphorically. It's literally heated by whatever divine nonsense Apollo installed last spring. You don't approve of it, mostly because you didn't think of it first. There they are, the sandals, just sitting there. You raise an eyebrow. No traps, no security imps, not even a passive-aggressive note. For someone so obsessed with being admired, your brother sure is careless with his footwear. You slide the sandals into your satchel. You pause again. This feels too easy, so you look around and decide to complicate things because that's what makes it fun. You remove one sandal and place it upside down. You tie a Pegasus feather around the other. You sprinkle just a little powdered ambrosia on the floor. Not enough to be dangerous, just enough to confuse the Hecaton Shires if they're tracking smells today. You step back and admire your work. Truly pointless. Absolutely perfect. You turn around and begin walking toward the outer gardens, humming to yourself. Something ancient and catchy, probably older than mortal memory. Something Apollo hates. He says it's disruptive to harmony. You say it's catchy as Tartarus. On the way out, you pass a statue of Hera that always judges you. Even though it's stone, you can feel the eyebrow raise. You nod politely. She doesn't nod back. The sun begins to rise as you slip out. The back gate, sandals tucked away, heart light, mission technically accomplished. Of course, the real fun hasn't even started yet. That comes later, when Apollo wakes up and tries to walk dramatically into breakfast, only to find himself barefoot. But you'll be long gone by then. Probably halfway to the icy caves of Mount Lycos, where no one goes because it's too cold and too boring, and honestly, too irrelevant for most gods, which makes it the ideal hiding spot. You don't even need to hide the sandals well. You just want the legend to be confusing enough that when future bards try to retell it, they hesitate halfway through and go, wait, Was this real? Why would a god do this? And that's the point, because your Hermes dot, and sometimes the best kind of chaos ... is just slightly inconvenient. The sandals aren't just sandals. Not to you, of course. To you, they're a symbol of the absurdity of divine life and an opportunity to be annoying in a way that will confuse Apollo for days without technically breaking any laws. Which is your specialty dot as you descend toward the valley trail behind Olympus. You press the sandals gently to your ear, like a seashell. No sound, obviously, but you pretend to hear them whispering anyway. Set us free, you murmur to yourself. We're tired of being so ... symmetrical. You chuckle, alone, loudly. Birds scatter from nearby olive trees in a flutter of indignant wings. They're not used to gods walking this early. Or maybe they are, and they just find you personally unsettling. Understandable. The trail splits into three. One leads to the dry riverbed, one to the chorus frog fields, and the other to the old goat shrine that nobody talks about anymore. Naturally, you take none of these. You step off the path entirely and vanish into the thick lavender bushes, because subtlety, when combined with randomness, becomes impossible to trace. It's not just about stealing the sandals. It's about transporting them theatrically without being seen, heard, or worse, interrupted by a bored satyr looking to gossip. You pull your cloak tighter, more for effect than necessity. Cloaks make everything feel more official. You stop beneath a pomegranate tree whose fruit is always unripe. You tied that enchantment yourself a century ago out of pure spite. Still unripe. Still funny. There, at the base of the trunk, lies your first distraction device. A small mechanical cricket, enchanted to chirp at precisely the same pitch as Apollo's lyre when he's annoyed. You built it last week. You place it gently in the grass and wind the mechanism. Chirp, chirp, perfect. Apollo will hear it echo through the valley and be forced to investigate. Because no one mimics his lyre without consequences. Not even you. Especially not you. You move quickly now, slipping between shadows that don't belong to anything. You don't step on twigs. You step near them, just close enough to cause anxiety in anyone listening. A few minutes later, you arrive at the mouth of a dry well. You whistle once, and a faint metallic clunk answers from the bottom. Good. Your delivery system is still there. You drop the sandals, one by one, into a rope, pouch, and lower them gently down into the darkness. Not to hide them yet, but to store them while you prepare the next leg of your route. You never carry the target too long. That's amateur work. You pause to eat a fig, because why not? It's not a particularly good fig. You suspect it. Might even be a plum pretending to be a fig. You eat it anyway. Then you hear it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, rhythmic. Apollo. He's awake. He's walking across his sunroom floor and not hearing the usual squeak of leather. He's noticing the powdered ambrosia, the feather, the upside-down sandal that's no longer there. You can feel his confusion like a pulse across the valley. He's not angry yet, just ... unsettled. Delicious. You whistle again, this time in a pattern that only a very old goat could understand. In the distance, a bleat echoes once. Loud, then silence. Message received. The old goat, your ally, your accomplice, your unpaid intern, begins his slow, ridiculous journey toward the east cave entrance. His role is symbolic. He will do nothing useful, but his presence will suggest you've gone east, which is a lie. A deeply convincing, slow-moving lie. You retrieve the pouch with the sandals and sling it over your shoulder again. The cave you're heading to is north. Not that anyone suspects it. No one ever suspects north. It's too cold, too boring. Too obviously unpleasant. And besides, everyone knows Hermes hates the cold. Or at least they think they do. You smile. Again. It's barely past dawn, and already Apollo is barefoot, disoriented, and probably monologuing to an empty room about cosmic disrespect. Which is, in fairness, exactly what you were aiming for. You duck under a thicket of thornless thorns, another enchantment you made years ago out of boredom, and disappear into the trees. There is no chase, no battle, no grand stakes, just a brother with cold feet, and another brother with too much time and just enough creativity to be dangerous. You arrive at the entrance of the cave long before the sun decides it's worth rising properly. The mouth of the cavern yawns like a bored giant, wide, dark, and lined with jagged teeth made of frostbitten limestone. You don't knock. You? Never knocked out, the air hits you first. Sharp, damp, and cold enough to insult your nostrils. It smells like frozen moss and forgotten promises, which is exactly the vibe you were going for when you enchanted the place. As you step inside, the temperature drops so quickly it feels personal. You pretend not to shiver, mostly because you're trying to impress the walls, which you suspect are secretly judging you. The first inhabitant appears before you even cross the threshold, a glowing blue slug named Gregor, who speaks only in riddles and exclusively about potatoes. Back so soon? Gregor oozes, not looking up from his tiny potato shrine. I never left. You lie, Gregor chuckles, though it sounds more like someone slowly deflating a bagpipe. You move on. The cave forks into 5 tunnels, labeled helpfully by signs that say things like, definitely not a trap, weird vibes this way, and socks required, seriously. You choose the unmarked one, naturally, because that's where you stashed the sandal crypt. Yes, you built a sandal crypt. No, it's not overkill. Along the way, you pass a colony of frost moths who only blink in prime numbers. You count, along with them for a while, just to pass the time. At 17, they all flap once and vanish into the ceiling. That always happens. You still have no idea why. It's probably symbolic. You duck through a narrow archway carved from glittering blue quartz, a portal you once named the mildly impressive hallway. Past that is the chamber, your chamber, a domed cavern glowing faintly with bioluminescent moss and occasional sarcasm. The floor is lined with ornate sandal-shaped grooves. Most are empty. 2 are now full. You place Apollo's sandals into the chilled, enchanted grooves, where they immediately stiffen with frost. Perfect preservation. 0 clues. Infinite confusion. You clap once, a signal for the room's main guardian to appear. With a creak and a puff of snowflakes, a massive tortoise slides out from a crack in the stone wall. It wears a monocle by choice and a scarf by contract. This is Bartholomew. He's slow, wise, and mildly judgmental. Stolen again? He asks in a voice like melting glaciers. No, borrowed creatively, you reply. He squints at the sandals, then at you. You know he'll just ask the oracle. I know, you grin. That's part of the next distraction. Bartholomew. Sized away only a 400-year-old cave tortoise can. A sound like regret, wrapped in disappointment, dipped in snow. You light a small brazier in the corner and toss in 3 feathers, a broken watch, and a single pomegranate seed. This is mostly for show, but it makes the air smell dramatic. You like that. You settle down on your mossy seat, which you enchanted years ago, to always feel like the perfect beanbag, and pull out your flute. Not to play it, but to chew on it thoughtfully, which you find makes you look mysterious. Far above, somewhere in the land of sunlight and sandals, Apollo is probably interrogating a mirror about betrayal, or chasing the cricket, or arguing with Gregor, which is a terrible idea. Gregor once convinced Dionysio that grapes were a conspiracy. You rest your head back against the wall and smile at your own cleverness. This is going exactly to plan, which you admit is a little suspicious. Apollo is not having a good day. First, his sandals are missing. Not just any sandals, those sandals. The golden, wing-kissed, ambrosia-infused pair that he had specifically not enchanted with a GPS spell because, quote, only amateurs label. Their lunch. Second, the cricket is gone too. The divine cricket. The one that chirps only in perfect iambic pentameter. It has standards. Third, he's now standing in the middle of the Agra with his hands on his hips and a scowl that could sour nectar. Around him, citizens of Olympus pretend very hard to be busy. One dryad is sweeping dust onto a pile, and immediately sweeping it off again. Repeatedly. You, of course, are nowhere to be found, right? Apollo mutters, snapping his fingers. The cricket may have fled, but he still has CSI mode, or, as you once mockingly called it, celestial sulking intensified. He kneels down dramatically. There's no trace of the sandals. No scorch marks, no feathers. Just a faint outline. In the dust shaped like a very arrogant footprint. His own, probably. Still, he stares at it meaningfully. A crowd gathers. Someone starts humming suspenseful music. Who would dare? He growls, eyes narrowed. Who would be foolish enough? In the distance, Dionysio falls out of a hammock, yells something about grapes being a myth, and promptly takes a nap on a goat. Apollo paces. He flips into full detective mode. Arms crossed, toga fluttering, divine brow furrowed like the sky. Before a storm. He checks the sky for omens. Too many clouds. He questions a bird. It lies. He consults the oracle. She's on lunch break. At last, he opens the scroll. Not just any scroll, the big list of suspects who have annoyed me recently. It's a long scroll. It unfurls dramatically, hits a nymph on the foot, and keeps rolling. Name after name, crossed out with flair. Except one. Hermes. The name practically glows with mischief and mid-tier chaos. Oh, it's you, Apollo mutters. The wind picks up, just enough to swirl his cloak like he's in a perfume commercial for vengeance. He storms off toward the oracle's cavern, muttering spells of detection under his breath, like some celestial barista whispering latte orders to the universe. Meanwhile, high above him, a cloud shifts. On that cloud sits Pytho, goddess of persuasion, eating ambrosia popcorn. Oh, this is so getting good, she says to nobody in particular. As Apollo descends the marble steps to the ancient cave, a trio of sheep cross his path. He pauses. They stare at him. He stares back. One of them winks. It's unclear what that means. He takes it as a clue anyway. He reaches the oracle just as she's finishing a plate of pomegranate seeds and lukewarm tea. She raises an eyebrow. Missing sandals? She asks before he speaks. Yes, and also a cricket. Both taken by someone fast, clever, and too proud of his own calves. She says, not even blinking. Apollo stiffens. So it is Hermes. She shrugs. I didn't say that. But if you happen to hear whistling from a suspiciously frosty cave, maybe don't ignore it. He bolts behind him. The oracle sighs. These gods and their footwear drama. Back. In the sky, Pytho rewinds time on her scrying mirror just to watch the sheep wink again. Deep inside the cave, you lounge like a philosopher who never actually read philosophy, just skimmed a few scrolls and decided confidence was enough. Bartholomew watches you from his mossy perch with narrowed tortoise eyes. You know he's coming, he says. You nod slowly, dramatically, as though weighing the nature of inevitability itself. Is he coming? For me, though? You say, tracing lazy circles in the frost on the wall. Or is he coming for himself, searching for meaning in the absence of saws? Bartholomew doesn't respond. You take that as a cue to continue. Consider this, old friend, you begin, standing up and pacing with the air of someone delivering a lecture no one asked for. Are sandals truly objects? Or are they extensions of the divine ego? And if the ego is wounded, can footwear ever truly heal it? Bartholomew blinks once. Very slowly. He might be asleep with his eyes open. Hard to tell, you continue anyway. Now take Apollo, for instance. He is, as we all know, deeply attached to symbols. Sunlight, music, predictability, rhythm. But what happens when you disrupt a symbol just slightly? When you take one item, one seemingly mundane piece of leather, and remove it from its context? You gesture toward the sandals resting in their frosty shrine. Suddenly, he is incomplete. Not because he lacks protection for his divine feet, but because he lacks a story that makes him feel in control. And what is divinity without narrative? Bartholomew lets out a faint sigh. You continue undeterred. In fact, you add, now. Standing atop a small crystal outcrop like it's a podium, one might argue that by taking his sandals, I've offered Apollo the rare gift of reflection, a chance to confront his dependency on aesthetic wholeness. I am, therefore, not a thief, but a mirror, a metaphor with legs, silence, and then a voice, clear, melodious, annoyed. You are a menace with too much free time. You freeze. Slowly, cautiously, you look over your shoulder. Apollo stands at the cave entrance, bathed in golden light, which is rude, frankly, because you are enjoying the gloom. His arms are crossed. His hair is glowing unnecessarily. He's tracked you through riddles, nonsense sheep, and at least one hallucinating dryad, which is impressive, but not entirely unexpected. You wave at him like you're not surprised. Brother, you say, bowing slightly, to what do we owe this unannounced philosophical inspection? He ignores the sarcasm and points at the sandals. Give them back. You raise a finger. Before we rush into restitution, might I offer a brief no, he says firmly. No discourse. No metaphors. No self-indulgent analogies about footwear and identity. You squint. But what if no? Bartholomew clears his throat. He did have a compelling section about ego and souls. Not helping, Apollo mutters. You hop down from your podium with a sigh. Fine, you caught me. You followed the absurd clues. You resisted Gregor's potato riddles, and now here you are. Very impressive. Apollo walks toward the sandals, but you step in front of him. One condition, you say. He stops. Of course, there's always a condition. You smile. You have to admit it, publicly, that I outwitted you, just once. He stares. The cave air crackles with passive-aggressive tension. Finally, he says, fine. You are a nuisance wrapped in a problem wrapped in a flute. But yes, you outwitted me. You blink. Really? Really. You step aside, allowing him to retrieve the sandals. He picks them up, holds them, frowns. They're a little colder than usual, a little stiffer. They smell faintly of moss and moral ambiguity. You pat him on the shoulder. Just think, you say. Next time you wear them, you'll be stepping on a memory. Apollo gives you a flat look. Next time I wear them, I'm stepping on you. Bartholomew chuckles. You grin. The cave, once filled with frost and mystery, feels oddly warm as Apollo. Leaves, sandals in hand, ego only slightly bruised. And you? You settle back down, flute in hand, already planning your next philosophical crime. After Apollo's exit, sandals in hand, dignity mostly intact, the cave returns to its usual state of chilled quiet and slow echoes. You exhale loudly and flop onto your favorite patch of moss. Arms spread wide like you just delivered a one god stage performance. Which, in a way, you did. Bartholomew resumes his spot on the stone ledge and clears his throat in Tonga, that tortoise way that suggests he's about to say something deeply unnecessary. You know what this calls for. He begins, "Ice cream?" You offer, "No," he says, adjusting his monocle. "A forum." You groan, "Not the forum. Please, Bartholomew, not again." But it's too late. From deeper within the cave, the part even you don't visit unless bored beyond salvation, a soft rumbling begins, followed by a faint clinking. Then ... voices. Slow, low-pitched, extremely methodical voices. The Council of Speaking Turtles is assembling. You tried to disband them once, years ago, after they spent 3 hours debating whether sunlight was a form of bias. But Bartholomew reactivated them last winter because he claimed ethical reflection builds character. You remain motionless as they arrive, one by one, their shells marked with dust, runes, and random snacks taped to the sides. There are 5 of them, always 5. Their names? Irrelevant? They change weekly. This week they go by. Objection, mistrial, Leaf, Leonard, and Carl. But the sea is silent. They take their places in a perfect semicircle around you. Objection speaks first, very slowly. "Of course, we have gathered," he intones, "to debate the morality of brotherly sabotage. ... again. You sit up. It wasn't sabotage. It was enrichment through inconvenience. Leaf raises a wrinkled flipper. What is a brother, truly, if not a convenient target of minor psychological experiments? Finally, someone who gets it, you say. But Leonard cuts in. And what of Apollo's emotional stability? His reaction suggests trauma. You scoff. He got his shoes back and a free lesson in humility. Humility must be earned, not gifted through trickery. Mistral chimes in. Carl, silent C, says nothing. But the silence is devastating. Bartholomew watches from the side, sipping from a cup of glacial tea. "Let's keep this civil," he murmurs. You sigh dramatically, leaning back on your elbows. "Okay, fine. Let's discuss. Let's reflect. Let's deconstruct the ethics of hiding a pair of sandals in a frozen cave as a form of light-hearted, passive-aggressive sibling enrichment." The turtles nod, all at once, very slowly. Like glaciers thinking about moving, Leonard begins a speech on divine boundaries, but it's interrupted by objection, quoting something suspiciously similar to a mortal law code. You start to tune them out. You've heard most of this before. Something about fairness, responsibility, the consequences of manipulating reality for minor personal amusement. Blah, blah, blah. Instead, you focus on Carl, the silent one. He's staring at you. You squint back. There's a moment. An understanding. A silent exchange of telepathic respect between two beings who know that rules exist mostly to be mildly subverted. Carl blinks once. You blink back. It is done. The council continues arguing, slowly, methodically, with pauses so long they could double as naps. Eventually, Bartholomew calls for a vote. All in favor of classifying the sandal incident as harmless mischief with philosophical implications? 3 flippers raise. All opposed. 1 flipper. Carl abstains, obviously. Bartholomew nods. The motion passes. Hermes is absolved. You sit up straighter. "You mean I'm right?" Bartholomew shrugs. "You're not wrong." You grin. "That's the best kind of right." The council disperses in the same slow, deliberate fashion as always, disappearing one by one into side tunnels filled with who knows what. Probably more debates about moonlight bias. You lie back down and sigh contentedly. Another crisis resolved. Another non-crime judged harmless. Another day perfectly wasted. And somewhere, far above, Apollo is probably still explaining to someone why his sandals feel emotionally colder now, which, you think, might just be your best work yet. You're halfway through a nap, when the smell of goat hair and eucalyptus invades the cave. You open one eye. A shadow looms in the entrance. Stubby legs, overly confident stance, beard like it's been through at least 3 minor prophecies. It's Mellow, the oracular goat. You sit up, rubbing your eyes. Shouldn't you be forecasting harvests or warning mortals about moderately important omens? Mellow snorts. I took a personal day. He trots in like he owns the place, which, to be fair, he partially does, thanks to a very unclear property sharing agreement written during the Bronze Age. I smelled disruption, he says, sniffing the air theatrically. Oh, please. That could be anything. Apollo's ego alone causes at least 3 spatial disruptions a week. No, this one was U-shaped. You shrug. Guilty-ish. Mellow circles the sandal crypt, snorting and muttering to himself. Occasionally, he licks the frost. For clarity, he claims. You suspect he just likes the taste of questionable decisions. You're hiding them in the wrong place. He finally says, shaking his little horned head. You raise an eyebrow. Excuse me? Too predictable, he says. Apollo already knows your cave is dramatic and unnecessarily symbolic. He'll come back. He'll monologue again. He might bring snacks. You fold your arms. Then where do you suggest I hide them? O woolly oracle of infinite wisdom. Mellow hops onto a stone ledge, then pauses dramatically. A cold shelf. You blink. The what? The cold shelf, he repeats, with significantly more gravitas this time. A ledge halfway up Mount Lycos, forgotten by gods. Feared. I squirrels. Perfectly boring. You frown. You mean that tiny outcropping that collects snow and broken pine cones? Exactly. That's not even a hiding spot. That's a geological shrug. Precisely, Mellow says, clearly enjoying your frustration. It's so irrelevant, it becomes undetectable. You hate how much sense that makes. You sigh. So you're saying I should move them again? He nods. Unless you want a sun god rummaging through your cave and possibly lecturing the moss about proper footwear maintenance. You consider your options. Keep the sandals here. Your curated crypt, enchanted groove system, temperature-controlled lighting, or move them to a ledge, an actual ledge, covered in snow, with bad posture. And yet ... Mellow snorts again and turns to leave. You'll thank me when your moss hasn't been melodramatically purified by divine light. Before you can respond, he's already clippity-clopping back into the shadows, muttering something about goat tax exemptions and the tyranny of sandals. You sit there for a long moment. Then, without speaking, you retrieve the frost-stiff sandals from their display grooves, wrap them in enchanted cloth made from leftover nymph gossip, and sling them over your shoulder once more. The cold shelf, boring, pointless, entirely beneath Apollo's radar. Perfect. High on a neighboring ridge, tucked behind a polite-looking shrub that doesn't ask questions, you recline with a spyglass fashioned from a hollowed-out reed and mild disrespect. Below, Apollo stands ankle-deep in a stream, holding what appears to be a very soggy note. He reads it aloud. Dear seeker of souls, the sandals have ascended. You may now find them at the summit of Mount Self-Doubt, just past the fog of overthinking. Bring snacks. G. He frowns. Gregor, he mutters. You grin. Gregor the satyr had agreed to serve as a decoy messenger in exchange for 3 bottles of moonberry wine and the right to rename a tree. He chose Clarence. No one knows why. Apollo trudges out of the stream, sandals still missing, patience very much on life support. He pauses at a nearby tree, notices a carved message on the bark. Sandals? Never heard of them. Definitely. Not Hermes. He closes his eyes for a moment, possibly praying, possibly rebooting his mood. From your perch, You sip cold tea from a hollow walnut and hum quietly. Bartholomew, balanced on a lower rock like a sentient moss accessory, watches too. You. No, he says, there's an elegance to this chaos. You nod. Misdirection is the highest form of affection. Bartholomew gives you a look. That's not a thing. It is now. Below, Apollo consults a crumpled scroll he found wedged inside a squirrel's den. Planted by you, naturally. It's labeled Sandal Location Clues. Maybe. Subtitled. Definitely not a poem. He reads, To seek the soul, ignore the soul, for neither guides the hunter whole. The leather walks where none would climb, except perhaps a goat with time. Apollo stares at it for a long, long time. Then he tears it in half, mutters something in elision, and begins walking confidently in the wrong direction. Bartholomew whistles softly. You really gave him the goat clue? You shrug. He's been ignoring Mello for years. Time he learned to listen. From your pocket, you remove the enchanted cloth bundle, the sandals still inside, chilled and silent, safe, unbothered. The cold shelf had welcomed them like old furniture, reluctantly, but with stability. Apollo, blinded by overconfidence and rogue poetry, wouldn't think to check a location that wasn't at least 40% metaphor. You stretch, yawn, lean back. Should I feel guilty? You ask. Bartholomew considers it. Probably. You smile. Good thing I don't. Down in the valley, Apollo begins interrogating a bewildered badger. You watch, sip your tea. Let the quiet mountain wind do the storytelling for a while. It's been 3 days since Apollo last threatened to smite a fern. Progress. From your ledge near the cold shelf. You watch him pick his way across the snow, muttering to himself and occasionally checking the sky for signs of divine interference. He looks tired, philosophical, mildly frostbitten in a fashionable way. Behind a rock, you shift slightly and peek through a tangle of sleepy vines. The sandals, still wrapped in their enchanted cloth, rest exactly where you left them, tucked beneath a patch of bored snow. Apollo stops. He looks down. Tilts his head and frowns. You hold your breath. He bends over, brushes away the snow. You NWREPS. The cloth. Stares. You brace for it. The shout, the righteous fury, the long-winded monologue about divine respect and the sanctity of personalized footwear. But instead, AP, oh hello, just blinks and says, What are these doing here? You blink too. He picks up the sandals and examines them like they're a pair of half-melted relics from someone else's prophecy. Then, with a quiet shrug, he mutters, Must have dropped them. Drop them. You cover your mouth to stifle a laugh. Bartholomew, sitting nearby with a Pinnacone notebook and zero shame, chuckles softly. Apollo sits on a rock and starts putting them on, completely unbothered. No dramatic speech. No cosmic accusations. Just casual footwear, RECONNECTI, He wiggles his toes. Flexes. Stands. Huh, he says, they feel colder than I remember. Then, and this is the best part, he casually turns and walks away. No grand realization. No memory of the cave, the false clues, the goat, or the council of judgmental turtles. Just a sun god, reunited with his sandals, vaguely confused, mildly underdressed, and completely unaware he just fell for one of the oldest tricks in your book. You lean back against the rock, grinning. He actually forgot. Bartholomew nods solemnly. Either that, or he's pretending to forget to reclaim the high ground. You consider that. Nah, if he were pretending, he would have left the scroll titled A Lesson in Grace or something. Fair. The wind brushes past you both, soft and slow. The kind of breeze that doesn't disturb anything important, just nudges the world. Along like a sleepy suggestion, you stretch and pull your cloak tighter. Another story complete. Another quiet trick, carried out not for power or glory or vengeance, but simply because boredom, when left alone too long, starts crafting little masterpieces of mischief. And somewhere, far down the mountain, Apollo hums to himself, "Sandals, finally warm again," probably still wondering when he took them off in the first place. The boring odyssey of Dionysus getting lost in his own vineyard. It is not morning, but Dionysus says it is. Somewhere between the fourth nap and the second brunch, the god of wine, leisure, and completely optional ambition stretches beneath a canopy of leaves. It may or may not be sentient. Ah, he sighs, eyes still half closed. Another fine morning. A grape rolls gently off his forehead. He makes no effort to catch it. Birds chirp lazily nearby, sounding suspiciously like they're humming a tune he once composed while tipsy and barefoot. Everything is soft, overly fragrant, and vaguely theatrical, like the inside of a velvet curtain from beside his pillow, which is actually a folded toga on top of 3 wine barrels. Dionysus picks up a scroll titled "Witty Things I've Said Today." It's blank. He smiles proudly. So far, flawless. Outside, the vineyard waits. Rows upon rows of lush vines shimmer in the warm breeze. Grapes of every imaginable shade sway with boredom, gossiping in the language of rustling leaves. The vineyard does not need tending. It tends to itself. But Dionysus, in a sudden gust of irrelevant inspiration, decides today is the perfect day to inspect it. He stands eventually, adjusts his sash, pours himself a small goblet of something suspiciously blue, and with the confidence of a man who has never used a map in his life, he announces, "To the vineyard. Let's make poor decisions at a leisurely pace." A single grape falls from the sky. He considers it a blessing, and then he walks forward, into the vines, into the blur, into the soft, entangled maze of his own making. You walk past the first row of vines. It doesn't look like much, just a few grape clusters hanging lazily in the sun, some curling tendrils, a beetle napping on a leaf. But then the air changes slightly, like someone whispered maze. 3 miles away, and the wind carried the echo. Behind you, the leaves shift. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to suggest that the entrance, if it ever was one, is no longer where it was. You think about turning back, but then a breeze pats you on the shoulder, and you take it as encouragement. You keep walking. After all, it's your vineyard. How lost could you possibly get? The rows begin to curve now. Just a little. No longer. Straight. As if the vines have grown bored of geometry and started experimenting with artistic expression. You pass a trellis shaped like a question mark. You don't remember planting it that way. Grape rolls across the path in front of you. Slowly, with intention, you squint at it. It rolls faster. Somewhere nearby, a leaf flutters too loudly. The silence returns even louder than before. You take a right turn, or maybe a left disguised as a right. The sun slips behind a cloud that looks exactly like your face when you pretend to understand wine terminology. The path narrows into a polite squeeze, then opens again, then narrows again, as if the vineyard is trying to decide how much of you it actually wants today. You pause to examine a vine shaped like a harp. It hums faintly, but only when you look away. The ground beneath your feet starts to feel more spongy. Grapes burst under your sandals, tiny, sticky sacrifices to your increasingly aimless march. In the distance, a scarecrow waves. Despite the absence of wind, you wave back out of habit or guilt. Your goblet is still half full. You sip. It's lukewarm, possibly lavender, possibly a mistake. Another turn. Another fork in the path, except this fork has 5 tines and one of them loops back toward itself. You choose the middle one. It feels neutral. The vines seem taller. Now, the grapes heavier. A few of them shimmer, though none of them glow. A signpost appears beside you, blank on one side, and on the other side, a single word. Maybe. You nod, slowly. The sign nods back, and then just ahead, a crow lands on a grapevine and looks at you like it knows something. You recognize this crow, or at least you think you do. It might be the one you once taught to say, "Divine vintage," in 3 different accents. You ask it for directions, it burps. That seems fair. You follow it anyway, because truly, what could go wrong? The crow eventually flutters off, not in a hurry, not with purpose, just bored. You're alone again. Or at least, as alone as one can be in a vineyard that may or may not be sentient. The path now resembles a spiral, or a swirl, or possibly a very lazy pretzel. It's difficult to say. The more you walk, the more everything loops, folds, and leans in on itself. The vines above have begun to arch, forming a kind of ceiling made entirely of green. Light filters through it, like it's been diluted. Then you reach something. It looks like a vine. Just a vine, except it's much too symmetrical, and too perfectly centered in the path, and slightly glowing. But in a humble way, you attempt to step around it. The vine stretches sideways and blocks you again. Not aggressively, more like a bouncer made of lettuce. Then a sound. It's not. A voice, not exactly. More like a feeling shaped into syllables. Words arrive in your brain as if dropped gently from a high shelf. You may only pass if you compliment me. You blink slowly. It continues, sincerely and with variety. You stand there for a moment, mildly insulted and deeply impressed. Consider turning back, but that would require remembering where back is. So instead, you begin, slowly, carefully, like a poet who's just woken up from a nap inside. A salad. You admire the vine's curvature, its unexpectedly elegant twist, its moderation in leaf distribution. You comment on how its bark texture suggests emotional intelligence. You flatter the evenness of its grape spacing. You praise its resistance to mildew. There is a long silence. Then, slowly, the vine slinks to the side with the dignity of a gate opening for royalty, or at least for someone who said nice things convincingly enough. You nod. The vine nods back in its own leafy way. You walk past it. But you have the strange sense that if you ever return this way, it will want a whole new set of compliments. You keep going. Because now you are deeper. And the vineyard is just beginning to become itself. The air grows warmer. Not unpleasant, more like the temperature of a room where someone recently said something profound and then left. You walk. You walk more. You are certainly progressing. There's a footprint in the dirt. Then another. Then 12 more. They look familiar. Same sandals. Same slight rightward drift. Same lazy heel drag that suggests an unspoken disagreement with linear time. You look behind you. No one. You look ahead. Still no one, except those same footprints. Again, you follow them? Because it's what one does when one's own footprints show up where they shouldn't be. The grapevines begin to hum, quietly, perhaps in judgment, perhaps just out of tune. A gentle breeze passes through, carrying the scent of fermented plum and misplaced ambition. It brushes your face like a sigh from an overworked satyr. You take a long sip from your goblet, now only a quarter full. It tastes like rosemary and decisions you forgot to finish. Somewhere to your left, a rustle. You turn quickly and see a small bush. It wiggles once, guiltily, then freezes. You nod, acknowledging its effort to remain anonymous. You return your gaze to the path, which now forks into 4 directions. All of them look equally unimportant. You choose the third one from the left because it has the most dappled sunlight and seems like it would smell nice. More vines. More looping prints. A single sandal, yours certainly, hanging from a tree. Branch far above. No explanation. You're still wearing both feet. This feels fine. Another breeze passes through. This one feels slightly inebriated. It circles you twice, then bumps into a vine and falls still. You wonder if it's trying to warn you or flirt with you. Either way, it's not helpful. You take another turn, possibly the same turn as before. It's hard to be sure when the shadows keep shifting like they're late for something. The sun is lower now, or maybe it's higher but slouching. You walk in what might be a straight line, but every few steps you spot a crushed grape from earlier. You recognize the squish. You're looping. Clearly. But gently, softly, like a dream on repeat. And honestly, it's kind of nice. You stop to sit, not because you're tired, necessarily, more because the ground looks soft and there's a patch of moss shaped vaguely like a chaise lounge. You lower yourself slowly, like a scroll unrolling in slow motion. Your goblet is now just a memory. You hold it anyway. Nearby, a cluster of grapes hangs lower than the others. You notice one grape in particular. It looks concerned. Its shape is slightly lopsided. Its skin a bit wrinkled, like it's been thinking too hard. There's an aura of worry about it, as if it has witnessed something troubling and is now reconsidering everything. It doesn't blink, because it's a grape, but somehow it gives the impression that it would. If given the chance, you lean in. Its expression seems to say, is sweetness meaningful or merely convenient? You're unsure whether the grape is judging you or simply reflecting your internal state. Either way, it's unsettling. You consider plucking it, not to eat, just to change its view. But you don't. It feels like interrupting someone mid-existential spiral. Instead, you give it a respectful nod and stand again, as if leaving a silent monastery. The vines ahead part slightly, not out of reverence, but more like they're tired of resisting you. You walk on. The ground crunches faintly beneath your sandals, like old parchment being folded. The smell of overripe grapes is thicker now, syrupy and warm, like a dessert that's been left out too long at a feast. No one remembers attending. Above you, a single grape detaches from its stem and falls. It lands with an anticlimactic thump right next to a tiny sign stuck in the dirt. You crouch to read it. The sign says, "You are still lost, but you're doing great." You smile. Then frown, then walk forward, because that's what you've been doing, and there's really no reason to stop now. You turn a corner that wasn't there before. This one feels promising, not because of anything in particular, just the way the light filters down in slow motion. Like it too is a little bit lost. Then you see it. A puddle, not large, not deep, but unmistakably ... wine. You tilt your head. It tilts back, not physically, but spiritually. You crouch beside it. It doesn't smell fresh or aged. It smells like the idea of wine, half forgotten at the bottom of a glass in the middle of a monologue. You peer in. The puddle doesn't reflect your face. It reflects your intentions, which is confusing, because your intentions are vague. But still, there they are, sloshing gently, unsure, slightly grape-colored. Then, as you continue to watch, shapes begin to form. A half-written poem about moonlight. A loaf of bread you meant to finish baking. 3 unfinished toasts you once gave, all beginning with to ... something. You blink. The puddle ripples ... and then it whispers ... it's not sound. Exactly. More like your own name, said with the voice of a nap. You don't remember giving the puddle your name, but it has it anyway, which, frankly, Feels on brand for today. You dip your finger into it, gently, respectfully, like testing the temperature of a very old metaphor. The wine clings to your skin. Warm, a little fizzy, possibly sentient. You pull back. Your fingertip now smells like childhood and basil. You nod to the puddle. The puddle nods back. Maybe. You rise and keep walking. Because even when wine starts speaking, the only real option is forward, especially when you're not sure where forward is. You turn another corner, or maybe the corner turns you. Either way, the path opens into a small clearing shaped like a shrug. There, standing, or perhaps waiting, is a creature. It is unmistakably a minotaur. Broad, horned, hooved, and yet lacking a certain menace. Its shoulders are slightly slouched. One horn is chipped. Its loincloth is wrinkled, like it sat too long without standing up. You stop walking. It doesn't growl, doesn't charge. It just sighs, a long bored sigh, like someone waiting for their tea to cool, but also forgetting why they made it. You and the minotaur look at each other. There is no tension. Only mutual curiosity layered with apathy. The minotaur gestures vaguely to a side path. Not aggressively, more like a suggestion from someone who's given up on being taken seriously. Nod. It nods back. Then it says absolutely nothing, which is generous, because if it had spoken, it probably would have said something like, "I'm only here because of a contract." As you step past it, it offers you a grape. You take it. It's flavorless. Perfect. The minotaur returns to leaning against a tree that seems equally uninterested in being a tree. You walk on. No battle, no puzzle, just ... Gentle disappointment, shared in silence. And somehow, it's one of the more profound encounters of the day. You find yourself in a narrow passage lined with particularly chatty moss. It doesn't speak, of course, but if moss could gossip, this would be the kind that whispers damp secrets to the bark of trees, slowly, syllable by syllable, over centuries. You walk. The path feels slightly different now, more echoey. You say something aloud. Just to hear your own voice. Something simple. "Hello?" The echo returns. "Yellow." You blink. You try again. "Is anyone there?" The echo replies. "Hair." Not helpful. You pause and try to think of something more distinct. "Dionysus." The echo returns, quietly. "Who?" "Now that's just rude." You frown slightly. The echo returns nothing. Of course, you keep walking, passing beneath twisted vines that arch like half-forgotten cathedral ceilings. You say nothing more, but the echoes persist on their own. When? Again? Really? They seem to be asking questions now, most of which you have no answers for. You say, mostly to yourself, "This vineyard is very large." The echo returns. "Is it?" You sigh. So does the echo, but like half a beat late. It sounds like it's mocking you, gently. You come to a stop at a fork in the path. There's no sign, no markings, nothing to indicate which direction is less confusing. You whisper, "Left?" The echo replies, "Definitely right." You squint. You go left. Because if the echo is anything like your internal monologue, it's probably wrong. And if it's right, well, at least you'll be consistently off course, which, at this point, might as well be the goal. You step into another clearing. This one feels quieter than quiet. Not empty quiet, but the kind of quiet that makes you wonder if you walked into a conversation that stopped just before you arrived. Around you, dozens, maybe hundreds, of vague, shimmering shapes hover in the air. They're not quite visible, but also unmistakable. They look like fragments of ideas, half-finished lists, unsent letters. The feeling you get when you walk into a room and forget why. They float bobbing gently like balloons tied down by invisible strings. You realize these are forgotten thoughts, not just yours, though surely some of them are, but thoughts left behind by anyone who ever wandered too far into the vineyard with a full stomach and a full glass. You pass one that feels like it was once. Remember to ask Pan about the thing. You nod solemnly. Another drifts by. That smells faintly of lavender and reeds somehow. That dream where the goat was also my aunt. What did it mean? You don't ask. At the center of the clearing stands a vine wrapped around an empty chair. It hums softly, not music exactly, but a warm tone, like a nap that almost happens. A particularly dense forgotten thought floats your way. It sparkles. With indecision, you feel it brush past your shoulder, and a memory flickers in your mind. Did you leave a pot boiling on something? Somewhere? You blink. It's gone again. One of the thoughts, shaped like a question mark made of fog, bumps into you gently and whispers something that sounds like ... You were going to say something ... weren't you? You shrug. It seems satisfied and floats. Off. You sit in the chair for a moment. The vines don't mind. The thoughts swirl. You begin to forget what you were thinking, which, in this place, feels like respect. You close your eyes for what might be a second or a century. When you open them, the thoughts are gone. Or maybe you are, but your feet are still on the ground, and the path is open again. You stand and move forward, somehow lighter. You walk for what feels like the third time, even if it's the first. The air is thick with the unmistakable scent of almost remembering something. It's a mix of sun-warmed wood, fading wine, and a word stuck on the tip of your tongue. You pause, not because you're lost, that part's a given, but because this part of the path is eerily ... familiar. The curve of the vine, the oddly shaped rock that resembles a slightly guilty goose, the shadow that almost, but not quite, waves at you. You're certain you've seen this before, possibly just now, possibly in a dream you had while napping under a grape-scented cloud. You turn in place. The trees behind you look identical to the ones ahead. So does the air. You try to recall whether you passed this part already, but instead, you remember the feeling of forgetting, which is not the same thing, but it'll do. Then you hear it. A faint hum. You look around, nothing visible, but the sound is unmistakable. A wine cork being slowly twisted, but never quite popped. You walk forward. 1 foot, then the other. And as you move, the scent deepens. Now it smells like the exact moment you realize you left something important in a place you can no longer name. A breeze rustles the leaves. They seem to whisper, "Didn't you say this already?" You ignore them politely. A cluster of grapes dangles to your left. You could swear you passed it before. One grape has a dent that looks like your thumb, possibly because it is your thumbprint. Possibly because this vineyard has opinions about loops. Still, you keep going, because the only way out of a déjà vu is through it. Eventually, the smell shifts. Now it's more like possibility. Or toast. You're not sure, but at least it's new. You press on, hoping the next section contains fewer recursive grapes, and maybe, just maybe, a direction. Eventually, the vines part, and before you stretches a gentle slope covered in the kind of grass that has clearly spent its entire life being praised. It's impossibly soft, the color of serenity, and it smells faintly of warm honey and old lullabies. Take a step forward. It feels like walking on a well-meaning cloud. There's no breeze here, just the air settling the way a blanket does when it realizes you're not getting up. At the far end of the field, there's a single tree, wide, welcoming. The sort of tree that probably knows everyone's secrets, but chooses not to mention them. You do not mean to lie down, but somehow you do. The grass cradles you with silent competence. A vine curls near your ankle, not to trap, but to reassure. Above you, clouds drift by very slowly. One of them looks like a liar. Another looks like the word maybe. Your eyelids grow heavier dot in the distance. Somewhere between your last thought and the next, a pan flute plays 3 notes, then gives up. Time loses its edges. The vineyard forgets you for a moment, or perhaps remembers you too well and gives you space. Sleep arrives, not with urgency, but with familiarity. You do not dream, but you do rest, and for a long while, minutes or centuries. It's unclear, nothing happens, which, somehow, is exactly what you needed. Eventually, your eyes open, not because you're ready, but because the nap has respectfully ended itself. You sit up slowly. The grass has flattened beneath you in the shape of a comma. A light breeze brushes past, carrying with it the faint aroma of grapes, dust, and missed appointments. You look around. Everything is the same, but slightly tilted. Then you see it. A small archway in a hedge you could swear wasn't there before. Or maybe it was, but you were always looking slightly to the right. It's a perfectly average exit. Unremarkable. Underwhelming. Really. No glowing symbols. No chorus. No thunderous realization. Just a path. You walk toward it. The arch doesn't resist. As you pass through. The vineyard behind you doesn't vanish dramatically. It simply continues existing without you. Few grapes fall off their vines in mild celebration. Or boredom. You emerge into soft sunlight. Not brighter. Not better. Just different. A sign nearby reads, "Thanks for wandering. You were never truly lost." You shrug. It feels fair. Somewhere far behind you, a minotaur exhales another tired sigh. The echo tries to remember what it was supposed to say. You take a deep breath. Outside the vineyard, life resumes gently, like waking from a nap you didn't know you were taking. There's still no map, but at least the ground feels solid, and you're no longer holding a grape with your own thumbprint on it. Progress